My dear Wormwood, the amateurish suggestions in your last letter warn me that it is high time for me to write you fully on the painful subject of prayer. The best thing, where it is possible, is to keep the patient from putting serious intention of praying altogether. It is funny how mortals always picture us as putting things into their minds. In reality, our best work is done by keeping things out. If this fails, you must fall back on a subtler misdirection of his intention. Whenever they are attending to the enemy himself, we are defeated. But there are ways of preventing them from doing so. The simplest is to turn their gaze away from him towards themselves, keep them watching their own minds and trying to produce feelings there by the action of their own wills. When they meant to ask him for charity, let them instead start trying to manufacture charitable feelings for themselves and not notice that this is what they're doing. When they meant to pray for courage, let them really be trying to feel brave. When they say they're praying for forgiveness, let them be trying to feel forgiven. Teach them to estimate the value of each prayer by their success in producing the desired feeling, and never let them suspect how much success or failure that kind depends whether they are well or ill, fresh or tired at that moment. But of course the enemy will not, in the meantime, be idle. Wherever there is prayer, there is danger of his own immediate action. He is cynically indifferent to the dignity of his position, and ours, as pure spirits, into human animals on their knees. He pours out self-knowledge in a quite shameless fashion. But even if he defeats your first attempt at misdirection, we have a subtler weapon. The humans do not start from that direct perception of him which we, unhappily, cannot avoid. They have never known that ghastly luminosity, that stabbing and searing glare which makes the background a permanent pain to our lives. If you look into your patient's mind when he's praying, you will not find that. If you examine the object to which he's attending, you will find that it is a composite object containing quite ridiculous ingredients. There will be images derived from pictures of the enemy as he appeared during the discreditable episode known as the Incarnation. There will be vaguer, perhaps quite savage and puerile images associated with the other two persons. There will even be some of his own reverence and of bodily sensations accompanying it, objectified and attributed to the object revered. But whatever the nature of the composite object, you must keep him praying to it, to the thing that he's made, not to the person who's made him. With this, the man trusts himself to the completely real, external, invisible presence, there with him in the room, never knowable by him, as he is known by it. Your affectionate uncle, Screwtape. My dear Wormwood, obviously you are making excellent progress. My only fear is, lest in attempting to hurry the patient you awaken him to a sense of his real position. For you and I, who see that position as it really is, must never forget how totally different it ought to appear to him. We know that we've introduced a change of direction in his course, which is already carrying him out of his orbit around the enemy. But he must be made to imagine that all the choices which have affected this change, of course, are trivial and revocable. He must not be allowed to suspect that he is now, however slowly, heading right away from the sun on a line which will carry him into the cold and dark of utmost space. For this reason, I'm almost glad to hear that he is still a churchgoer and a communicant. I know there are dangers in this, but anything is better than that he should realize the break he has made with the first months of his Christian life. As long as he retains externally the habits of a Christian, he can still be made to think of himself as one who's adopted a few new friends and amusements, but whose spiritual state is as much the same as it was 6 weeks ago. And while he thinks that, we do not have to contend with the explicit repentance of a defiant, fully recognized sin, but only with this vague, though uneasy feeling that he hasn't been doing very well lately. This dim uneasiness needs careful handling. If it gets too strong, it may wake him up and spoil the whole game. On the other hand, if you suppress it entirely, which, by the by, the enemy will probably not allow you to do, we lose an element in the situation which can be turned into a good account. If such a feeling is allowed to live, but not allowed to become irresistible, and flower into real repentance, it has one invaluable tendency. It increases the patient's reluctance to think about the enemy. All humans at nearly all times have at some such reluctance. But when thinking of him involves facing and intensifying a whole vague cloud of half-conscious guilt, this reluctance is increased tenfold. They hate every idea that suggests him, just as men in financial embarrassment hate the very slight of a passbook. In this state, your patient will not omit, but he will increasingly dislike. In his religious duties, he will think about them as little as he feels decently can beforehand, and forget them as soon as possible when they are over. A few weeks ago you had to tempt him to unreality and inattention in his prayers. But now, you will find him opening his arms to you and almost begging you to distract his purpose and benumb his heart. He will still want his prayers to be unreal, for he will dread nothing so much as effective contact with the enemy. His aim will be to let sleeping worms lie. As his condition becomes more fully established, you will be gradually freed from the tiresome lie. As his condition becomes more fully established, you'll be gradually freed from the tiresome business of providing pleasures as temptations, as the uneasiness and his reluctance to face it cut him off more and more from all real happiness, as his habit renders the pleasures of vanity and excitement and flippancy at once less pleasant and harder to forego. For that is what habit fortunately does to a pleasure. You'll find that anything or nothing is sufficient to attract his wandering attention. You no longer need a good book, which he really likes, to keep him from his prayers or his work or his sleep. A column of advertisements in yesterday's paper will do. You can make him waste his time not only in conversation he enjoys with the people whom he likes, but in conversations with those he cares nothing about on subjects that bore him. You can make him do nothing at all for long periods. You can keep him up late at night, not resting but staring at a dead fire in a cold room. All the healthy and outgoing activities, which we want him to avoid, can be inhibited and nothing given in return, so that at last he may say, "I now see that I spent most of my life in doing neither what I ought nor what I liked." The Christians describe the enemy as one without whom nothing is strong. And nothing is very strong enough to steal away a man's best years, not in sweet sins, but in a dreary flickering of the mind, over it knows not what and knows not why, in the gratification of curiosities, so feeble that the man is only half aware of them, in drumming of the fingers and kicking of the heels, in whistling tunes that he does not like, or in the long, dim labyrinth of reverses that have not even lust or ambition to give them a relish, but which, once chance association has started them, the creature's too weak and fuddled to shake it off. You will say that these are very small sins, and doubtless, like all young tempters, you are anxious to be able to report spectacular wickedness. But do remember, the only thing that matters is the extent to which you separate the man from the enemy. It does not matter how small the sins are, provided that the cumulative effect is to edge the man away from the light and out into the nothing. Murder is no better than the cards if cards can do the trick. Indeed, the safest road to hell is the gradual one, the gentle slope, soft underfoot, without sudden turnings, without milestones, without signpost. Your affectionate uncle, Screwtape.